The St. Lawrence River Institute's Science and Nature Untapped series has morphed into the Science and Nature Untapped. Joining me now to speak a little bit more about it is Dr. Jeff Riedel from the River Institute. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Gabe. Happy to be here.
All right, so first of all, for our viewers who may not be familiar, let's talk about Science and Nature Untapped series that's been quite popular.
Yes, it has. Science and Nature on Tap is a speaker series to bring science to the general public in Cornwall. And, in a lot of different places where you'd have a university setting, you probably have access to speaker series where people talk about, subjects of interest of science. So the River Institute thought, here's something we can do for Cornwall. We've started that speaker series initially through the Cornwall Public Library. We were finding, though, the questions that people were asking, they wanted to go on, and the library would be closing by the time we were finishing up. So we morphed over and decided, you know what, let's go to a real relaxed background and sort of environment. So we brought the speaker series to Schnitzels and used their back room there. At the same time, people can order a beer or their beverage of choice and listen to what we hope is a very interesting topic on either science or nature or a combination, obviously, of the both.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the main goal of these series and why that message is important to get out to people about what's going on at the River Institute.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the River Institute, the River Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to research, education, and outreach. And that outreach is really the broad, how do we get the information out to the public who wants to know more about the river, know more about the science that's getting done, and what roles they can play in helping to, achieve, let's say, protect the river, for example. So we, thought here's the best thing is to provide an open access, free of charge speaker series to bring in interesting people to talk about those interesting subjects that deal with science, nature, the river, anything to do with the environment as well. And and make it so that the whole idea is it's meant to be a fairly short presentation with lots of time for questions so that people can get their questions in, because I know for me, I love to hear what the scientists have to say, but it's the questions that people and the kind of things that people want to know about that really excites me. So it's been a very successful series. Normally it's once a month on Wednesday evenings at Schnitzels and runs kind of like from 7 to 8. And it's been, I think, as you say, it's been pretty popular.
And that interactive aspect that you just mentioned really does set it apart from other such series. So obviously with the COVID-19 crisis, era of physical distancing, a series like that at Schnitzels just wasn't feasible. However, you've adapted and now it's Science and Nature Untapped. So can you tell me about the new format?
Yeah, the Untapped format is the idea of how do we do this remotely. So what we've done is we had a speaker that was scheduled for the last one before it actually then COVID kind of things got shut down. So we had this person in the wings, and they said, well, we've got to be a way that we can reach out to the public, and everyone now is getting better and better at Zoom or Teams or whatever, Skype, whatever software you use. And so is there not a way that we could sort of deliver this same, science and nature speaker series, but in a different format or remotely? And that's what the plan is. And the idea is that, it's normally Science and Nature on tap. So we said, well, we'll call it Untapped this time because we won't be at Schnitzels. We won't have, people might have access to whatever beverage that they prefer to watch it. The show with, but we'll do it so that the speaker will be remote, but there will still be an opportunity for interaction and for questions.
So if people are interested in joining in, it is coming up on Wednesday, May the 6th. So how can people join in on that?
Yeah, sure. Our speaker is Emily Dupree, who is from Clarkson University, and she's going to be speaking on Wednesday. What I would say is we're going to post a link on our website at www.riverinstitute.ca under the outreach folder, and there you see Science and Nature speakers there, and there'll be a link to Emily and to her talk, and you just join in, and that's how it's supposed to work. We'll just fingers crossed to be our first, so we'll figure out exactly if there's any kinks. I hope not, and knock on wood on that. But yeah, so just www.riverinstitute.ca, go to outreach and click on the link that's shown there under speaker series. And so our speaker is Emily Dupree. She's a PhD candidate at Clarkson University, and she's really interested. She does fascinating research about chemicals and contaminants in the environment, and how it affects what's called the proteins in the body. So she'll talk about that. I'm looking forward to it. Should be really an interesting talk.
And coming up on the show, we actually have a chance to speak with Emmeline and for a little bit more of a preview on her show. But before we wrap up with you, Jeff, I'd just like to ask how people can continue to support the River Institute's important work during this time.
Thanks for that, Craig. The River Institute is a nonprofit organization, and a big part of, important for us is sponsorships and donations. So if you go to that website at www.riverinstitute.ca, there's also a big donate button there, and you can just click on that. And if you feel like making a contribution, please go ahead and do so.
Excellent. Well, on that note, Jeff, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me and enlightening our viewers, and for all the work that you and the entire team at the River Institute do to study the river and keep us informed.
Thank you very much.
And joining me now is the virtual guest speaker at the upcoming St. Lawrence River Institute Science and Nature Untapped, Emmeline Dupree. Welcome to the show, Emmeline.
Hi.
Now, you're from Clarkson University. You're a PhD candidate in chemistry. Why don't you tell us first a little bit about your background and in science?
Okay, I'm originally from Messina, New York, and I went to school about a half hour away in Potsdam, New York, at Clarkson University for my undergrad in biomolecular science. So biomolecular science is basically kind of like biochemistry. I started my research there in 2013 when I was a sophomore. I continued it until I graduated, and I decided to continue on and get my PhD in chemistry at Clarkson University, which is what I'm doing now. I'm in my 4th year, and I plan to graduate in the next year.
Excellent. So where did the science bug come from?
Since I was younger, I've always been super interested in STEM. I loved math, loved science. If I could have done something more with math, I think I would have, because I love it so much. But science just kind of seemed like the more rewarding path. And I love biology, I love chemistry, so I just decided to go with it.
And of course, the nature of your research, so heavy on the river, is probably perfect considering you're from Messina, which is right across the river from us, but also right in your backyard.
Yeah, if I go out in my front yard, I can see Canada from here, actually. We live basically right on the river, and I've grown up going on the river. I had a boat growing up. I have a boat now. So yeah, it's really near to my heart.
All right, so the nature of your research focuses on chemical residue in the river. So why don't you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So yeah, this is a very, very small part of a bigger project that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the States, has going on. So we're just trying to look at PBT chemicals, which are persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic chemicals in the Great Lakes, in the St. Lawrence River, and see how they're affecting the ecosystem. So the part that I do is seeing how these PBTs that have accumulated in the Great Lakes, how they're affecting human consumers, so people that eat the fish. Since these chemicals are bioaccumulative, they accumulate in the fat tissue of fish, and then when we eat those fish, we get exposed to those chemicals. So I'm trying to see how it's affecting the proteome, which is the set of proteins we have in our body. Proteins are a major factor in basically all diseases. And so if we can see how the proteins are being affected by these PBT chemicals, we're going to be given sort of a hint at the biological pathways that are causing disease.
And obviously, we're talking about health here, so this is a very important research. So talk to me about why it's so important, what you're focusing
on. So of course, we love to eat the fish. Fish are very, very beneficial health-wise. But we have to kind of weigh in the factors of where we're getting the fish, if those fish are safe to eat. And the Great Lakes have dangerously high levels of chemicals like PCBs and organochlorine pesticides right now. So if we want to eat those fish, we have to make sure that those levels are low enough that they're still safe to eat and get those beneficial effects. And through my research, I have found some proteins that are dysregulated when we see high concentrations of PBTs in the human blood. So we're still trying to figure out how safe those fish are to eat.
And this ties in wonderfully with what our St. Lawrence River Institute does. So maybe talk about your relationship with them and how you guys connected.
I was at a conference at Clarkson University. It was for the Great Lakes. I can't remember the exact name of it, but the River Institute was there. And they asked me if I would like to present at the On Tap series that you guys have at the St. Lawrence River Institute. I was originally supposed to do it back in March, but then things got crazy, and now I'm here doing it at my own house.
It'll be different for sure, but maybe talk a little bit about what you will be speaking about on Wednesday. I assume it's going to be some of what you've already spoken about here, but maybe give our viewers a sneak peek of what they can expect on your presentation.
Yeah, so on Wednesday, I will be talking about my research, a small part of my research, but it's probably the most interesting part of my research, talking about how these PBT chemicals are affecting the human proteome of people that eat a lot of fish from the Great Lakes. So I'll be talking about why we're doing this research, the specific methods that we use to do this research, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the results that we found so far.
Excellent. And so, what is your what has been your thoughts of the River Institute so far? Obviously, you haven't done the presentation yet, but in your conversations with them, what has your experience been?
Yeah, they've been great. They've been very receptive, easy to talk to through email, especially with everything going on. It's been great. And I would really like to keep in touch with them after this presentation and keep helping them out in whatever way I can.
And hopefully those keen that are watching that are interested in this will sign up to attend the presentation on Wednesday. But for those who want to follow this further, this research, and maybe find out more information later on, how can they follow this project?
If you go to google.com/scholar, and if you Google my name, Emmeline Dupree, and every research article that I'm a part of will come up, and whatever you're interested in, click on it, and you can read a little bit more about my research.
Excellent. Well, it's fascinating research to be sure, and I'm absolutely sure that your presentation will be very insightful on Wednesday, and hopefully people will take the opportunity to attend and learn more about these effects that these chemicals are having on our river, on our food supply.
I hope so.